the feedback you receive from your CELTA tutors is so valuable. The last day of the CELTA course, so my last TP, I received an email from the local community college where I tutor right now, asking me to come in for an interview. And I thought that the timing was just so perfect, because I was ready to jump in. I wanted to take everything I learned and just not waste any time. And a lot of people, I think, when they start the course, they're like, I need to get a pass A, I need to get a pass A. And I think that, aim for that, like you said, aim for that. Don't make it the only thing, and maybe not even make it the main thing, but have it be one of your goals, because ultimately your goal should be, I'm going to leave this course with so much knowledge and be able to just step into a classroom and teach.
You don't need to reveal your whole entire life, but you need to bring some personal energy, some personal, hey, I want to be here. Hey, I'm interested in you getting better. Is the CELTA certificate worth it? What is the cost to value of doing the CELTA? Well, today I've got a treat. I'm speaking to a colleague, a friend, a client. Seth has joined us today. He's recently finished the CELTA. He's right away working as an English language teacher in the United States, and he is going to talk to us today about his experience of getting ready, doing the course, and what life was like after CELTA. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's Seth. So first of all, thank you very much, Seth, for joining me today. But a big part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you on this call was, so I know that you've recently finished your CELTA and you started teaching. And I wanted to get this perspective, not just of the technicalities of doing CELTA or the technicalities of teaching, but what's involved in, I guess, getting the certificate, and what does it mean to have it afterwards. But before we get into all of that, could I just ask you, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where are you from, and how you thought about doing this thing called CELTA?
Yeah, well, I'm located here in Tacoma, Washington, probably 30 minutes south of Seattle. And yeah, it's funny how I kind of landed in the CELTA course. Kind of started with me just trying to figure out, what do I do as a career? Like many people who finish their degree, it can be overwhelming to think like, okay, now what? And did a lot of online searching about teaching English as a foreign language, and looked into, there's a million different online certifications, some of which are probably better than others, but when I learned about CELTA, I was like, this is what I want to do. It's widely recognized, most credible. It's Cambridge endorsed, and it seemed like it prepared teachers probably far better than other online courses. So.
And kind of, I guess, jumping to the end a bit now, we covered all of the part in the middle, but did you find, so you mentioned there about it being widely recognized, did you find that to be the case post CELTA, like after you finished? Like, when basically what I'm asking was, if you applied to a school or spoke to any other professional, like another teacher or trainer, did you find that it had that recognition, that it meant something in terms of getting a job, and it meant something in terms of other professionals knowing what it was?
That's a great question. I know CELTA is probably more recognized in Europe and maybe other parts of the world. Maybe a little less in the US, but it's funny. So I'm teaching ELA instructor, and I'm also a head English language tutor at a community college. So at the nonprofit I'm teaching at, they had no idea what CELTA was.
Wow.
Kind of surprising. I know there's one other CELTA certified teacher there, so she knew, but it wasn't something they were familiar with. However, at the community college, when they saw, oh, you have a CELTA, and you received a pass B, they were very impressed by that, and it was encouraging. Like, wow, okay, like you do recognize, how this, this certificate, shows that I'm, can really succeed in this position. So
Not to labor the point too much, but so you mentioned that you did come out with a pass B, so congratulations on that. That's a pretty great achievement. Not many come out with that. So Did you notice that having, yeah, you mentioned that your employer like paid attention to that. Have you found that that's had any kind of, do you find that they're giving you more responsibility, or I guess throwing you in at the deep end a little bit more, or anything like that? Can you notice any kind of like knock on effect rather other than the just like well done, I guess?
Yeah, no, definitely. When I applied for the position, it was just for a standard, writing tutor. I had no idea, I didn't know that I would actually land in the position I'm in currently. So yeah, so there's like tutors who, tutor in English, English 101, or maybe they work with ELA and EAP students. But I think after they recognize, oh, Seth is CELTA certified. He received this grade. They offered me the position as the head English language tutor, and comes with a bit more responsibility, but it's allowed me to, you know, uh, conduct, a talk time. So just an English conversation group, and they've really whatever, Seth, whatever ideas you have, we want to know, and feel free to change this, and really just giving me as much like autonomy in this position as possible. So
That's amazing. That sounds like I was saying to somebody I work with recently. It's great when like your boss gets out of your way and lets you work, kind of thing. Like we need management, we need direction. We need at schools, we need a director of studies, that's often called, or a head teacher, somebody to when you're stuck for ideas, or you're having a problematic class or student or something like that, you certainly need that guidance. But if you're that good training, and you feel, okay, I got this, then let me go and teach. Just, you mentioned that you're teaching a conversation class there. Do you find any of the techniques or methods that you picked up on CELTA, like maybe delayed correction or anything like that? Do you find yourself using any of those things?
I think with the specifically the English conversation group, it's very informal. I mostly have a group of international students from Japan who are only here for a short period of time, so they're trying to get as much practice with, a native English speaker as possible. So really for that, I present some discussion questions on a variety of topics, and we just talk. There's very little correction there, but definitely when I'm teaching, that is a huge part. And I notice, my students, at the nonprofit, they are like, "Teacher, like, is this correct?" Or they want to be corrected, and it's hard because I have a pretty big class of like 20 students, big compared to what I was teaching, in the CELTA course. But so it is hard to, correct every little thing, but they're eager to be corrected there.
That's great when you have those motivated students. So just let's get into the whole CELTA side of things. So how would you, I'm going to put this question as broad as possible. How would you describe the CELTA journey? And maybe you can think about, like, what were your expectations coming onto the course, and then how did that match up with your actual experience of doing the course itself?
Yeah, well, as someone who, did the Celtic course with no experience teaching, um, it was a little overwhelming because I'm stepping into something I don't have the knowledge of, what does it mean to be a teacher, especially teaching a language like English. But I think, you glean as much information on the internet, on YouTube, on Reddit, and there's so much, but really you can't know what it's like until you're in the course. But I think it really exceeded my expectations. I mean, my CELTA tutors were wonderful. I was in an online environment, so I was a little concerned with connecting with some of my peers. That ended up not being a problem at all. I was able to develop really deep relationships with them, still keep in contact months later. And I think overall, there are certainly advantages and disadvantages to being, in an online setting for the CELTA course. However, it wasn't much of a problem once you get familiar with Zoom and using online tools. Teaching, now that I teach in person, really it's not much different. And so, yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
So it was really interesting that you were that you have that perspective that you took the online course, had a positive experience, and then right away you're teaching in person. It was certainly a concern that like I had beforehand, that like I worried if the online training would translate to the in-person environment. So you have precisely this experience. So would you say that things like the staging of the various kinds of lessons and techniques like drilling and nominating students and error correction, all of these kinds of things, has it been your experience that those do translate well from the online environment to the face-to-face environment? And would you say it would be fair for employers to see the online or the face-to-face course as equivalents?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think in terms of the lesson frameworks and how to stage a lesson and really create a communicative and engaging lesson, whether you learn that online or in an online CELTA course or an in-person CELTA course, I think those are equivalent. Um, those don't change. However, there maybe are some smaller challenges to taking the online course in terms of, like you mentioned, drilling pronunciation. Uh, it's a little difficult when Zoom, sometimes there's like overlap. People are talking at the same time, or people have their mics muted. Those are like small things that definitely are easier in a classroom setting. However, I think a lot of people are concerned, whether on Reddit or in your comment section. Should I take the online course? Will employers see that as valuable as taking the course in person? And that hasn't been an issue for me. In fact, I think if you're able to teach and navigate, Zoom and all of these online tools, really, teaching in person is going to feel much easier, probably, in that in that sense. Yeah, I would say don't let that dissuade you. If the only option for you to take the course is online, you're going to be fine.
It's such an interesting perspective. Like you've really actually allayed a lot of my own fears and concerns as well. Because and maybe I was a little bit too fixated on the tools like that you mentioned, like about Zoom, and that's going to kind of like interfere with acquiring these teaching techniques and skills. But you're living proof that it does translate well. So that's really awesome to hear. Was there any part of the CELTA course that you found particularly challenging, like the assignments or those tutorials that you have, or writing lesson plans, or getting new teaching skills? The full gamut there. Was there any part that that you found you're kind of like up against it a little bit there?
Yeah, I mean, there was certainly a number of challenges. I think it's no secret. The CELTA course is rigorous. It is demanding and time consuming. I was fortunate enough to take the 10-week course, so had a bit more time to process what I was learning, a little bit more time to lesson plan and maybe create a schedule where I was lesson planning this day and maybe working on an assignment this day. So yeah, I think that universally is a challenge for people, especially if you are working, have a family, social life, all of that. But in terms of the other challenges in the course, I think you want to be challenged, right? You want to be stretched. That's really the only way you're gonna grow as a teacher. And if the course was easy, you're probably not really developing those teaching skills. So it is meant to be challenging. But again, don't let that scare you. Teaching in general has its challenges. So once you kind of, I guess, go through the course, once you're in a classroom and teaching, those challenges, you're gonna know what you're up against, I guess. Yeah.
You raise a really great piece of advice there that really speaks to me about how you. I guess you mentioned like you timetable your time so that you're writing assignments one day and lesson plans the other. So was that something that you like sat down with and wrote it out, or did a Google Calendar, or just talk to me a little bit about your time management over the course, and how valuable you found taking that approach, I guess.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning of the course, they give you a schedule. Hey, you're going to be teaching these days, and this is kind of what this assignment will be due then. And so I took all of that information and put it in like a notes, the notes app, and made little, check marks like every time I was done. I was like, okay, well, I can see the progress. We're getting through it. We're getting through it. And I think just for me, having that, visually in one place was helpful. And certainly there was some times where I spent far too long on a lesson where I could have maybe got that done sooner and spent more time working on other things, or just having, I guess, touching grass, so to speak. But yeah.
No, I think the time management part of CELTA is often the difference between having an extremely stressful experience of doing CELTA and having a pretty positive experience of it, and then even going beyond that to achieve those higher grades. So just while you were on the course, what kinds of materials did you did anything stand out, like in terms of a book that you're recommended by tutors, or and yeah, were there any online resources? I guess I'm angling at there as well. You and I have met online as well. So yeah, just talk to me about what resources you found helpful, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know how it is for other centers or, for the in-person course, but we were provided with a course book, and, they will say, okay, you're teaching this sort of lesson, use this, this part of the course book for that. And, the course books were great. Some of them were a little outdated. So being able to adapt those to maybe more relevant, context, I think was important. But yeah, the course books were great. As far as online, resources, I would say use Padlet. Padlet is it aesthetically is great. It's also just very user friendly. Students can engage with it by posting on it as well. And yeah, I would say there's Bamboozle, very commonly known. You can maybe create some games. And what's the other one I used? I guess I used Google Docs very often if it was like a lot of information that I needed students to write on or read.
Like course book for teaching, was there any kind of like methodology book? So like Learning Teaching by Jim Scrivener, or How to Teach English by Jeremy Harmer, or any of those books? Did they, some people like to have those because let's say you have an input session on teaching grammar, and okay, it's good. I've got a pretty good idea, but I just had an hour and 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it was at an input session. So I want to dig into it a little bit deeper. So some people like to go to, books like the Harmer book, or indeed, I do have some stuff up there on YouTube as well. And some people use those kinds of resources. So was any of that something that you went with at all yourself, or were you primarily just guided by those input sessions and like feedback from your tutors?
Yeah, I think through watching your YouTube videos and kind of the recommendations for books, I think many people recommend the same books, and it's because they're tried and true, so valuable. Yeah, I mean, I used Teaching English Grammar by Scrivener, Learning Teaching. You need that book. You will use it after the course. Maybe Fergus, you still reference it from time to time.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my list. Grammar for English Language Teachers by Martin Parrott. And then, yeah, I think another one is, Practical English Usage by is it Michael Swan. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those, the way you put that is perfect. They're tried and tested. I still refer to Learning Teaching for my own teaching, never mind training people as well. So yeah, I think that's a big one. And all of the ones you mentioned there, yeah, they're really kind of standouts. So I guess if you could give somebody a piece of advice, just in terms of how to get on well on CELTA, like was there anything that you found that worked really well for you? Was it like incorporating feedback from your tutors, or spending more time writing your language analysis, or what was it that you felt worked for you that you could maybe tell the people who are watching this video?
Yeah, I mean, the feedback you receive from your CELTA tutors is so valuable. I can't express that enough. I think any CELTA candidate would agree. And they are there to really, I guess, really pinpoint, hey, this focus on this. And I mean, they're all have been teaching for years. They know what they're doing, and so listen to what they have to say and apply it. Don't just listen to it, but apply it and really reflect on it. And I think I can almost guarantee you from TP1, where maybe receiving that kind of feedback is new to you, by TP8, you will know immediately after you teach what you needed to do differently. And even before your CELTA tutor gives you that feedback, you will know what they're going to say, because that self-awareness through, self-reflection after every single TP, you will know. And I think for me, without that feedback, I just wouldn't have gotten to the point by the end of the course without that. And you mentioned something else. Yeah, I think what really worked for me is, as a native speaker, we know how to use the present simple, past simple, present continuous. We know that, but maybe we don't know why. Maybe we don't know really how to really think of it critically and explain it to someone. So for me, that was something that I enjoyed, because I actually got to learn grammar for the first time, as silly as that sounds. And yeah, and I'm curious too. This is just a thought, but I know there was many non-native speakers taking the CELTA course. English was their second or third language. Um, and from my observation, it almost seemed like they had a better grasp on maybe some of the grammar, and maybe that's because they had to learn it differently than a native speaker. So yeah, I would even say too, if you are a non-native speaker and you're worried, is that going to be a disadvantage for me? I would say probably not. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that point. I often tell people, even after my own course, I struggled for quite a while with teaching pronunciation, and everything that I've been able to do well with pronunciation in the intervening years came from a conversation I had with a Polish colleague of mine. And this guy, he was amazing. He spoke English with a kind of a British accent, like it was really, really, he was immersed in English for a long time. But he had that, yeah, he has learned it academically, kind of insight that I didn't have, and suddenly a lot of things just started clicking. So I think our non-native speaking colleagues really do bring so much in terms of professional development for us as native speakers, and I think that goes both ways as well. Some of the nuances that might be in your regional variant of English that you speak in Washington might be different from the ones that I have in Ireland, etc. That really only comes from growing up in a place. So I think the merging of those two perspectives, I find it's been invaluable for me. What I've learned from my Polish colleagues, from my Brazilian colleagues, from my French colleagues. I could go on and on. I think I don't think I would be where I am today without it. And, I hope I've been able to give some of those things back in return as well. So, yeah, really, it's really important, I think, to, as you mentioned, just to have this kind of your eyes open in terms of what you're going to be getting out of the course. So yeah, just could you tell us how has it been since you finished CELTA, Seth? What have you been up to? Have you been? So we mentioned that you have been teaching a little bit. So just talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, funny story. The last day of the CELTA course, so my last TP, I received an email from the local community college where I tutor right now, uh, asking me to come in for an interview, and I thought that the timing was just so perfect, because I was ready to jump in. I wanted to take everything I learned and just not waste any time. So yeah, for me, the getting a job after the CELTA course happened very fast. I interviewed for the tutoring position and the teaching position the same day. and got the job offer on the same day later that week. And so for me, it happened very fast. And I know some of my peers, they've decided to maybe wait to teach after the course, and I think that's also a totally reasonable option for some people. Like I said, no teaching experience before the course, stepping into something that I knew very little about. My confidence was a little low at the beginning. I didn't really, I had nothing to base this off of. But by the end, I think I knew that I could step into a classroom the next day and teach, a decent lesson, right? And I think, even now, stepping immediately, into a position where I'm teaching and tutoring, I think that confidence has, stayed with me. And even though I'm still learning, like to anyone taking the CELTA course, take on the form of a sponge and absorb as much as you can. It's going to be a lot, but just take in all of that information. And once you step into the classroom, you're going to like recall so much. And I would say this too, like the frameworks that you're going to be using in the expectations of your CELTA tutors, they're gonna feel somewhat rigid, uh, and that's okay because you kind of need it to be rigid to have this structure. But when you go and you teach, you can kind of step out of that a little bit. I think those foundational things are still very important. You need to ask CCQs. You need to teach meaning, form, and pronunciation. You need to teach language and context. However, for me, I begin my classes with a game, and sometimes that game will last 45 minutes to an hour. But it's productive, and I think it gets a lot of people warmed up, and it makes, I guess, learning a language fun. And sometimes I'll do review of the previous day's lesson, maybe even do some error correction. So if I receive some of their writing, go home, see what is the kind of the common thread here. What are people maybe struggling with? Do some error correction at the beginning. Do error correction at the end as well. Do some pronunciation practice before I actually get into the lesson. So there's a lot of flexibility after CELTA. And I will tell you this as someone who had to teach 45-minute lessons that felt like very little time. And I think many teachers would agree. There's a lot of stages to get through. Um, However, now I teach 2-hour lessons, and that doesn't feel like enough time either. So there's never enough time, but that's okay.
I know the feeling. Sometimes on CELTA courses, I give the advice to trainees: if you are planning for a 1-hour lesson, write your lesson plan for 50 minutes, because for sure, those 10 minutes will get used up. For sure, whether it's a question, whether it's some incidental language, whether you just needed to provide some extra clarification on your target language, whatever it will be, the time is, as you so aptly said there, it's never enough, because once you get up and running, it's a very engaging thing, a language classroom. So I love this advice. If anybody's watching this, listen to these golden sage words of experience, because I love it, the insights and the perspective. And I also love the positive energy that you have around teaching, because I think as teachers, we need to bring that as well. We talk about in CELTA course, developing rapport. And sometimes we say that, or often we say that so much that it becomes almost like just an automatic box that's ticked. But, we still need to bring this, you don't need to reveal your whole entire life, but you need to bring some personal energy, some personal, hey, I want to be here. Hey, I'm interested in you getting better. I'm actually, that gives me a kind of joy, to see you improving, kind of thing. So it's just, for anybody watching out there, I think this is a great kind of like insight into, should I do this CELTA course or not? Well, if you have that kind of get up and go for it. Like if you feel that energy for it, I think that's great. So yeah, actually, Seth, if just for people out there wondering like how you and I know each other, what's our relationship? I'll let you describe how that went down and what kind of impact it had for you.
Yeah, I guess, when I had decided to take the course, and even before I had decided, surfing the internet, surfing YouTube, and of course, Fergus, your content, some of the first content that pops up if, people search CELTA. And, admittedly, I binged a ton of your videos and I was like, okay, this is awesome. And I think, even during the course, I would go back and, look at some of them. And yeah, I guess for me, when TP7 and TP8, rolled around, I was like, I should reach out to Fergus and, really bounce some ideas off of him and see what he has to say. And so, yeah, we connected and, we talked about, I would just say, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And, and you would be like, all right, well, great ideas. Here's some things we can tweak. And for me, you really encouraged me to take some risks with my lessons, to really not just aim for too standard, but really push it a little bit and see, experiment, because CELTA is not about getting it perfect. It's really, I think, about taking those risks, making mistakes, learning from them. And I would say from our conversations, it's always been, very supportive, encouraging, and I don't know. Maybe you could speak to this, but I see you as a mentor. I mean, we've kept in touch since early March. You've checked in with me. How's it going? And we've talked about life after CELTA and just some of the challenges of stepping into a classroom for the first time. But
And right back at you, actually, Seth. So I think I mentioned this to you, but in those sessions that you and I had, obviously you and I got on really well right away. But I was actually creating another course at the time. I was creating a course to help people with technology for teaching. And one of the ideas that you had for your lesson, you give it, I got that from you, so you're kind of a mentor for me as well. So, kudos and I appreciate it. But yeah, it's we're all on a not to sound cliche, but we're all kind of like on a journey. And I say that because my own journey started out. I wasn't a pass A candidate on my own self. I just got a pass. But in the intervening years, I kind of like have had this 2020 vision hindsight moment where I was able to see, okay, I wasn't at that level right when I finished, but like 6 months later, thankfully I got into a good school and I was surrounded by great people. And I'd say I was at the level of the A. And that meant something to me, not so much the credential, although that is huge because it helps you with employment, as you and I have talked about. But I think you do want to be kind of aiming upwards, kind of always, like, sure, you might not come out with always an above standard, but aim for it. Why not? Like you're doing this course, you might as well go after it. And if you don't get it, it's not like you're a failure or anything. And even a below standard, like that's not a failure other than a opportunity to improve. But so yeah, I love that perspective that you have, that like it's just worth pushing yourself a bit more. Even if you don't fully get to where you want to be, you will be there eventually. Just keep going. Like it's
And if I could add to that too, for me, I knew I was like aiming for that pass A, and a lot of people, I think, when they start the course, they're like, I need to get a pass A, I need to get a pass A. And I think that, aim for that, like you said, aim for that. And maybe, I guess for me, don't make it the only thing, and maybe not even make it the main thing, but have it be one of your goals, because ultimately your goal should be, I'm going to leave this course with so much knowledge and be able to just step into a classroom and teach. And if you end up with a pass A, congrats. If you end up with a pass B, congrats. If you end up with a pass, congrats. You made it, you're certified, and now you can go on and begin your career in this industry. And I guess, Fergus, we talked about it, I was worried, have I done enough to get a pass A? Am I on track? And you couldn't speak specifically to, you didn't watch me teach, but you could say, Seth, this is my experience with it. And I got that letter. Hey, this is your provisional grade. And surprisingly, when I saw I was a pass B, I wasn't too upset. I was like, you know what? This is good because if I got a pass A, I may have been a little too cocky and maybe not allowed enough, room for growth moving forward. And I guess that pass B that's hanging up on my wall just reminds me like there's so much to learn. Like Fergus, you've been teaching for years, and I'm sure you're still learning every single day.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. It's a beautiful and magnanimous note, I think, to end our conversation on. There's always a bit of room that we can always push ourselves a little bit more. We can always grow. We are never stuck. No matter what situation we're in, there's always something that, as long as we're drawing down air, there's an opportunity to grow. So I love it. So thank you so much, Seth. And yeah, I really look forward to talking to you again in a few months and beyond, and keeping, let's stay in touch. It's going to be great to see where you go with this whole teaching thing.
yeah, of course. And I'm gonna do the YouTube thing. If you're watching this, like, subscribe. Take the CELTA course. If you're interested, just go for it. Don't overthink it. So
Beautiful. I love it. Okay, thanks so much, Seth, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, thank you so much, Seth, for all of your wisdom and insights there. I think that was extremely valuable for people out there watching. Please let us know in the comments what has been your experience of CELTA and how are you preparing for the course. Okay, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.